welcome everyone to another episode of The More You Give. I'm your host, Jackie Barnum. Disclaimer, this episode is my opinions and my statements alone as Jackie Barnum and do not represent the views and opinions of the Marine Corps or the Department of Defense. Today's episode is brought to you by VetTix, which is an organization that gives tickets to military members and veterans. Go to vettix.org, vettix.org to check it out. Okay, so today's episode, I've been really wanting to get into this, honestly, before I did any recordings, but I'm super fortunate to have actually stumbled upon our guest today at a service that I attended. And today's episode is just really about what is service. Like, let's define what service means. Like, let's talk about how we tie faith into service and how, who we look towards. For me personally, I look towards Jesus and those teachings. So Tanner Green is our host today. He's a pastor. And I just want to get right into it with you, Tanner. Can you just introduce yourself and tell us a bit about how you got started as a pastor?
Yeah. So my name's Tanner Green. I would say that I'm here because people have served me. I'm here. So many people have sacrificed along the way. My parents, I've had so many mentors in my life that have impacted me, taught me about God's love, and I just want to share that with other people. So that's how I really became a pastor.
And I think it's interesting because we had an opportunity to talk, and you mentioned a impactful event as a child and how that kind of inspired you almost to pursue this.
Yeah, so I am the oldest cousin on both sides of my family. Most of my cousins are 7, 8 to 10 years younger than me. Grew up very close to one side of my family. And I remember something that in the area of service is something that's really meaningful to me. And I think captures, to your question, Jackie, what service really is. In my opinion, service is helping other people succeed. So when I was about in the 5th grade, I was given a school assignment, and the question that we had to write a paragraph on was, if you could trade places with anyone in the world, who would you trade places with? So all these area elementary schools were able to answer. They were able to submit one of their students for the newspaper. Mine was selected, and I picked Larry Jordan, Michael Jordan's brother. I'm a big basketball fan myself. Michael Jordan, who I think is the greatest player of all time. His older brother, Larry, is the one who really helped him succeed through the years. And so to me, even when I was a kid, I really thought that success in my life would be helping those around me, namely at the time, my younger brothers and cousins, succeed in what they were doing. So helping them in sports, helping them with school. And to me, that's really what service is looking through the lens of someone else and trying to help them.
And I think it's so interesting that you said, you had this impactful event, and you were in 5th grade, you said. And I was thinking, I was like, I actually feel that as well. Like when I was in 4th grade is when I was inspired to and motivated to that calling to service. And that's what initially, unfortunately, it was after 9/11 when I had a family member passed away in the World Trade Center. But I mean, that's a very impactful age. And I just knew at that time, like, I didn't really know what the military was, what service really meant either. I just had that calling. So I think it's interesting that you had a similar, you knew at such a young age, and like myself as well, like I have pursued that and followed that calling, and it's gotten me to where I am in the military.
Yeah, that's great. I love to hear that.
And then, so when you talk about wanting others to succeed and your success means their success, so how did you turn that kind of very big vision, like that's a huge goal, and then you started a church essentially with that mission?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. So founded a church and really sought that mission out. How do you really begin something brand new like a church? And so for us, there was a couple different ways that we could go about it. We could do outreach, trying to throw our own events. For me, though, putting my finger on the pulse of the community. There were already great people doing great things. So we did not need to reinvent the wheel. We just needed to come alongside, see how we can volunteer and to help them, and even whether that be with service, physical service, or with finances. And I call that success because, when as a pastor, when people hear that, one of the first questions is usually, how big is your church? Like, that's how the vast majority of people define success. And that's great. I want people to come. I want more people to come, of course. But to me, one definition of success is, how much do you help people in the community, the people who you really have common goals with, to serve the community. There's a line in scripture about seeking the peace and the prosperity of the city that you're in. And so to me, that's what we have tried to do, try to be about the common good. My hope was that someone would say about our church, even if I don't believe what they believe, I'm glad that they're here, that our community is a better place for them. So
Yeah.
that's our goal.
And I even feel silly, like when I was talking to, when I like introduced myself to you, because I was like, full transparency, like I'm a Catholic, so I don't really know the terms, and but just from my personal experience, like, and I'm so glad that I went to a service that you were speaking at, because faith is super important to me and service. But, unfortunately, and this is, again, my opinion, don't come at me, other Catholics, but like Catholicism isn't necessarily the most approachable religion, for me. And just having been that my whole life and wanting to reconnect to my faith and getting back into the teachings of Jesus and everything. So I like what you said, like, we don't care, like, who you are, what background you are, like, hey, we all have the same end goal and we all want to just help others and succeed. And I think it's funny how you said the first question you're asked is about how big your church is. And I feel like that's so applicable today, like even on social media, the first thing people look at is how many followers do you have? And that's like the same thing could be said, how many literal followers do you have,
Right. Yeah, that's right. I have on the background of my phone for the last few years this saying that says, the best leaders aren't gathering followers, the best leaders are building other leaders. It's a quote by Craig Groeschel, who's a pastor.
Oh, that is good. Yeah,
And to
that's
me,
really
it's yeah,
true.
it's pouring into other people.
Yeah. So when I went to Ocean Point, which is the church that you volunteer at, because that's not even the church you started, you just get always giving your time. The teaching or the reading that day was about the Jesus washing of the feet, and I have such a personal connection to that story, and I want to dive more into that teaching that you gave. But just from a personal standpoint, I mean, I was literally brought to tears as we were dissecting that, because when I was little, my principal of our school, she was a sister or a nun, and she's just one of those kinds of women who children just would flock to her, be giving her hugs. She had the biggest heart, was so warm, welcoming, loving to everybody, just loved the children, loved her job. And she did something went on that Sunday at Mass where she had a student from every class sit up on the altar, and she would physically wash their feet, like literally physically kneeling on the ground, washing every student's feet. And I remember, like, at the time, all the students were just like giggling because they were having their
Sure.
feet touched. But now
Right.
looking back at that and tying that into what you were saying, I mean, I just was so moving to me. So can we just kind of dive into that teaching?
Sure. To me, that teaching is really important. Jesus is about ready to be crucified. So the people that he's washing their feet, he's washing the feet of Judas, who is about ready to betray him. He's washing the feet of Peter, who is about ready to 3 times deny that he even knows Jesus. He's washing the feet of about 10 other people who are going to run the other way and abandon him. So for me, when you talk about Jesus and serving, I really think Jesus is the why behind serving. That's probably one of the most notable examples that we see of him serving that people point back to. I think this is important, Jackie, because for me, I see myself, I do see myself as a servant, and I hope to be a servant to other people. But I really see myself first as receiving that from Jesus, receiving that service, receiving that love. I think that's important because without that, without me first receiving myself, um, when I serve other people, I can almost in my mind like put them in my debt. Like, oh, I served you, I did this thing for you, and now you kind of owe me. But really, I'm serving another person because Jesus has served me. So to me, that allows us to both serve and then not be like self-righteous about how good we are, how much we do, how much we serve, to keep that in the forefront.
Right. And so I feel like that selfless service and that servant, we actually call it in the military that servant leadership, where we just
Mm-hmm.
are serving others. And even like I'm of course, like my brain just goes back to like my job, and there's actual I try to physically serve my Marines when possible. So we'll go out to the field, and there we have our like the food all set up and little kind of buffet style where we serve them, and I literally try to grab one of the serving things, and I, as their company commander, like I will physically serve them. And so they
That's
see
amazing.
that I'm
That's great.
not above serving them. Like, and I think that's such like a misconception. Like just because I may be like in charge, or because I have a shiny thing on my collar that makes me different than you, I'm not like better in any way. And I think people try to like just think they have to keep this like distance or something, but it's like, no, you actually need to be with your people and serving them
Mhm.
and setting that example. Like no one's better than anybody.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
um
unfortunately, yeah, that's the some. I know I've given the impression to other people that I've been self-righteous in the past, and it's something that never looks good on anybody. Self-righteousness, or to think that you're better than someone else. So we're not. We're all on the same playing field.
right. And then what sort of advice, because I know I just can't imagine as a pastor having to take a reading from the Bible in your brain, like translate it into a way that is applicable for us to understand, but then also knowing that every single person that you're speaking to has their own story, their own journey, and then their own way that they're going to internalize it and interpret it. So what kind of like goes through your mind in that process?
That's a great question. I really try to look at a portion of scripture and see what it actually says, and see how it fits into the whole story of Jesus. For me, a lot of the speaking really comes from conversations that I've had, conversations with people inside the church, conversations with people outside the church. I think that the story of Jesus speaks to what I would call like a deep human need. So to me, it's really trying to keep my finger on the pulse of just what it means to be a person in this world. We all navigate, we all navigate our own thing. I was just reading this book with my a couple of friends of mine, and talked about the recovery community and the manner in which they share stories. That if you've been a part of like an AA group, you see the stories that are told. And this writer, this author, I was reading a book by James K. Smith. He was quoting someone else. I can't remember off the top of my head, but uh, so oftentimes we want our story to be unique and special and different. We want to be distinct ourselves. But the author's point here was that in the recovery community, we resonate because the story has a sameness about it. That we all have some of these same struggles, and so for me, when you look at the root of some of the struggles, um, we all have a lot of us have very similar roots to our struggles, and the symptoms for some may be addictions to drug and alcohol. For others, it may be that they really like uh, to be in control, or they really they've or maybe they're codependent on someone else, and so we have different symptoms. But I think trying to listen to what people are saying, and sometimes listen beyond what they're saying. What are they? What are the deeper questions that they have?
Right. So it seems to me that your whole life you've just been serving, and you get fulfillment and purpose out of that. So how does the service that you provide for your church, and those that follow you and listen to you and you inspire, also, how does that kind of translate and permeate into your personal life? So like your marriage and your relationships with your family and friends, how does that give you a more fulfilling life?
I think that for me, I mean, my wife only has one husband. My kids only have one dad, and so the realization that there's a lot of limitations. I think just recognizing limitations is important. So for me, I want to serve. They're the primary people that I try to serve, that I try to be present with. You had talked about Instagram followers, and I told you in our pre-show conversation, like, I don't really have a brand, I don't have a following. Part of that is because I just don't have like the mental bandwidth to do that. I try to be home when I'm home and be present with them. And my hope, for my kids, is that I can model, and that my wife and I, that we can model for them the type of people that we want them to be when they grow up. So that's my hope, and that's how that all mixes together.
Right. And you had said, you're like, we're not a mega church, and we're not, and it seems like that is fine with you. Like what you can control, and like, this is the impact that I'm making, and you are strong in your faith. And even kind of with me, like, I know who my audience is with what I'm trying to change, and I'm not trying to like change everyone's opinion and minds and inspire millions, like, and like with you, it's like you have your church and you have your message, and you are so true to it, and you just act acting in faith and letting, I don't know, like, I just think it's really wonderful and inspiring that your message, what you're sharing with everybody, and just through like word of mouth and through your actions, is really what inspires people. It's not all about talking, it's about showing people like, hey, I'm willing to, like Jesus did. I'm coming all the way kind of back to Jesus. Like, at the end of the day, like, are you willing to get on your hands and knees and wash the feet of your people, the people that are going to hurt you potentially?
Yeah, that's such a great example that Jesus sets. And again, we're recording this right around Easter time, so that example is fresh on a lot of people's minds. And yeah, the limitations, we can only do what we can do. The reality is we have a very short life, and we're not here for long. There's a line in scripture that our life is like a mist. We're here one day, we're gone another. And I know life, for me, has gone really, really quickly. I look up, and I'm at an age that when I was a kid, I thought was old. And
me too.
I don't feel like that. But still, it's just this reality that that our life is short. We have to live for what's right in front of us.
You're so right. Tanner, do you have anything else that you'd like to share? You've been just hitting us with all these awesome quotes. I'm like literally writing down. I'm going to go like look back, giving us some awesome stuff. So, if anything else to share?
Well, I appreciate your service to our country, Jackie, and it's so many people who serve behind the scenes that we never see, that I never see. So I just want to thank you. I think you all lead the way. So just want to say thanks.
I appreciate that. Well, everyone, thank you so much for joining us again. I want to thank you for listening to the episode. Tanner, thank you so much. Tanner Green, go check him out. This has been a wonderful, super interesting episode for me personally. I hope you enjoyed it. Remember to go follow me on the parade deck and tune in for next week's episode of The More You Give. I'm your host, Jackie Barnum. Thanks so much.